Hi, I'm Samantha Abraham, and in today's webinar, we'll be looking at the emotional health and well-being of our children and what we can do as parents to really promote that. So we'll first start off by looking at exactly what we mean when we talk about emotional health and well-being, and then we'll be looking at some of the things that can happen that can get in the way of our children being as emotionally healthy as we'd like them to be ideally. Lastly, we'll be looking at some tools and some tips and some things we can do every day as parents to really encourage and promote that through having conversations and communication in a way that really makes it normal for our children to talk to us about what they're thinking and feeling, but also things that we can do as parents to encourage that and make that the normal thing to do within our families. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you there.
Good afternoon. My name's Sarah Rust and I am the lead on the Parent Champion programme with the Brilliant Parents. Welcome to our fourth of our Lunch and Learn webinars. Brilliant Parents is a charity whose aim is to support our children, parents and carers through managing their children's emotional and behavioural needs in a positive manner. Today's topic of emotional health for our children came about as a result of a parent consultation. We hope you'll find the information you hear practical and will want to implement some of the strategies in your own home. Shortly, I'm going to introduce you to our speaker, Samantha Abraham. Sam will address some of the questions that have already come in. If you have any questions during the webinar, we've got the Q&A feature, which I encourage you to use so we can make today's session as interactive as possible. If we do run out of time, Sam will answer all of your questions and will circulate her responses to everybody that is here today. Similarly, if during the webinar you feel like you would like to discuss some parent support, then please feel free to put your name and number in the chat and we will be in touch. Lastly, we'll end the Q&A with a short poll to evaluate how you found the session, which just leaves me to introduce Sam. Sam presented our first webinar on building resilience and did such a great job that we've invited her back again to talk about emotional health in our children. Sam is a Triple P practitioner, a coach and a psychotherapist. I do hope you enjoy. I'm sure you will. Sam.
Thank you, Sarah, for such a lovely welcome. So we talk about today promoting emotional health with our children. So firstly, we're going to look at exactly what emotional health is, what can affect emotional health, and what parents can do to positively promote emotional health. So emotional health itself is what children think and how they feel. And if we think about it in 3 stages, there's the thinking stage, then there's the emotion that they get as a result of the thinking, and then the behaviour that we see afterwards. And often it's the behaviour that we get concerned about as parents, because that's what we're seeing outwardly. It's also the children's ability to cope with difficult life events and how children themselves acknowledge their own emotions, how they notice those, and then also how they notice the emotions of other people. So I'd like everybody to just remember those 2 images in the corner there.
Hi, Sam. Sorry to interrupt you. Oh, there we are. The slides weren't showing. They are now.
Oh, are you okay? Oh,
yeah.
You okay now?
Yeah, all good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Can we see this one?
Yes.
Awesome.
Today we'll talk about.
Oh no, so I'm on to the next one.
Okay. What is emotional health?
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
So what emotional health is not is being happy all of the time. So can I have the next one, please? Thank you. So thinking about in more depth what we're thinking about and how we see this every day. Generally, we think of ourselves as either being happy or being somewhere away from happy, whether that's sad, angry, and what have you. But ultimately, what happens is a process, is a thinking that happens first that then informs how we're feeling. And it's always going to be in that order. So what we see again is those 3 stages: what we think first, what we feel, and then what we see as behavior. And generally, we'll kind of describe ourselves as kind of being glass half full or glass half empty, being kind of in a very good mood. And we'll see that outwardly. And that will tell us how we're feeling. And similarly, if we're not feeling that, we'll see things completely differently. Thank you. Can I have the next one? So for children think. in particular stages that depending on their developmental stage as well. Up until about 5 years old, generally they're getting their basic needs met from us, and everything is in relation to us as parents. So they let us know that they need something through trying and again through their behaviour, and we're responding to that. However, when they turn about 5 or 6 and they start going into reception or school, it's also the same time where their brain is starting to notice that there's other people around them that they're interacting with, and their thinking also becomes informed by other people outside of us. So they'll look at, in particular, teachers as an authority figure, and look at parents also as authority figures who inform their own thinking. And what that means is, in terms of the message they receive, that children are getting the message that they should do what they're told. It doesn't mean they're going to, but that's the message that they're running with, and that's kind of where their brain development stage is. So parents can help children at that stage, but not explaining just what is happening or what the rules are, but understanding as well what the reason is for the rules. So we're showing them lots of things, and we're demonstrating that as well. When they get to 7 or, well, between 7 and 11 years old, they start moving away from just thinking about their parents and their teachers being like primary influences and their other caregivers, to thinking about what is their view and what is everybody else's view. So they're getting their own kind of sense of self, but then also at the same time, they're thinking about what is equal and what is fair. Up until that stage, they're kind of looking at things in terms of the information that they're given and accepting that to be the truth. By the time they're between the 7 and 11, they're understanding that there's other versions of the truth and making up their own minds. So parents can again help them by teaching them the reason for the values from their own family identity, whether that's through faith or through other values, what the reason is to make these good choices. And again, that'll be something that's fluid through school, talking about healthy choices and good choices, healthy relationships, and how we impact other people just through our own behaviour and through our language. So how parents again can help in this stage is to give more detailed information and present the same information in different ways, so that helps them to make, again, sense of their self and their own decision making. As I'm sure parents of teenagers are more familiar, is that between 7 and 11 and 17 is that they develop a much more strong view of their own opinions and their own thoughts and feelings, but also in comparison to other people. So it's not just a joining of having different and multiple different sources of information. They're also getting a much stronger decision making of their own. It's their idea of what is right or wrong. It doesn't mean that it is right or wrong. It means it's their idea, and they get quite fixed on what they see as right or wrong, and they begin challenging then all these other opinions that they're also getting. What's also happening at the same time, though, is that the brain is wanting to know what's in it for them, and you'll get lots of that kind of language that says it in there, or they'll be driven to things that make them feel good or give them a reward. And how they'll go about doing that is seeking the attention of other people, again, outside the family and outside of teachers, more so from their friends. And it doesn't have to be necessarily positive attention. As long as it's some, they'll be guided largely by what other people think that they aspire to. So often their friends. And what parents can do at this stage, because again, they're becoming young adults, is do less of the kind of showing and giving detailed information, but more asking questions and showing curiosity and guiding their decision making, because they're then informing them how they can go about making decisions themselves. Thank you. Can I have the next one? So we think now about some of the things that can affect children's emotional health. So again, thinking about the things of being either glass half full or half empty, we can see anything in terms of how we think about it as either being positive or negative. But one of the major impactful things that happens in terms of how children form their emotion is whether they see the thing and they think of it as being a positive or a negative. And prime examples of that is when a new baby comes into the house, or they're starting going to school, going to university, going to nursery, college, trying new venues, those sorts of things, where they're trying something new. They can either see it from the place of thinking, this is something new, it's exciting, and they're really looking forward to it, or it can be a really scary thing. It might be something they're not looking forward to, it might cause lots of confusion. And that thinking is what then creates this emotion. Equally, some other transitions that happen is when a child is kind of transitioning themselves as a human being from being what they see as a younger child into adolescence or becoming a teenager. It's a confusing time for them where they're getting less messages around what they should and shouldn't be doing and given very clear instructions, the expectation for them to suddenly start making decisions and have developed the skills to make decisions better. They're given lots of messages around that. So there's lots of hand holding and things that were happening before start changing, and that is a difficult time, but at the same time they're also wanting to keep up with their friends and other people their age, and so battling that at the same time, as well as the physiological changes happening with their body. So for the child, that can be confusing, but also for siblings and for parents, it can be a really difficult time to try and make sense, because they won't necessarily have the language to put to all of these emotions. All they've got at this stage, again, is the thoughts, the feelings, and what we're seeing as parents is the behaviour of all that confusion of the things that they're happening with. Some of the other things that can impact that is the kind of changes, again, that adults are going through, that the children are then affected by. So whether that's things like moving house, going through redundancies or changing jobs. And similarly for separation, marriage and divorce, or going through financial hardship. And again, another confusing thing can be ill health in the family. All of these will bring about negative and or positive thoughts for a family, and those will impact the child. And then again, how they're thinking about it will then impact how they're feeling about it. And that's the emotional part that they're carrying. And that's what we're talking about when we're thinking in more detail about emotional health, is how does their thinking then create these feelings within them, and what do they then do with them? Thank you. So in each family, and probably some of these families you'll recognize, each family will kind of describe themselves as a whole as being more naturally quiet or talkative or loud or expressive or quite passionate. But within each of those families, they're going to be individual characters who have their own identity. And that's what makes it very difficult for children to make sense of what is okay and what is not okay. And so they're led by us as parents as to what is okay and how do we show our expression of our emotions. They'll be making sense of all of their emotions based on how we express ours, but also how we respond to them. So indirectly and directly, we're teaching our children which feelings are okay to express and which ones aren't by how we respond to them, but also the expressions that they see from us. Thank you. The ones that they see that are being okay, they will keep you fluid and they'll be regular, and there won't be any kind of sense of distress or stress within themselves. They'll just kind of express them and we'll respond to them, and those ones will be fine. What happens though, for the ones that we're saying are not okay, the ones that we may respond to by saying it's not okay to talk like that, it's not okay to speak like that, or we ourselves get arrested. So if a child is crying and a parent is frustrated or isn't coping particularly well or is distracted, what can happen is we're indirectly sending the message that that feeling is not okay. And so what happens is those become trapped or suppressed feelings inside of the child. And then what happens is over time, that spring will bounce back out. That feeling will come back out in their behavior. And we may see things like crying, argumentative behaviors, or aggression. They're going to come out in some way or another, purely because there's a build-up that's happening. And again, this happens for adults as well as children, is that over time, if we keep holding on to these feelings, at some point they're going to come out, either towards ourselves or against other people. And again, these are some of the behaviours that parents in particular will be concerned about, is that if it's coming out towards ourselves, we can see our children becoming quite withdrawn, quite sad, again, not be quite being themselves, but equally if it's towards other people, that might be lots of blame, shouting, aggression. So it's these sorts of signs at the same time we're looking out for as well. Thank you. So some of the signs that you might see at home when the child is not emotionally coping well, or again, they've got these suppressed feelings in the inside, is that they become more argumentative. Older children might say statements like, you're doing my head in, or you're getting on my nerves, or leave me alone. You might see visible unpleasantness. So when we're talking about that, what we're thinking about is if you're trying to connect with your child or even looking at them and they're somehow turning away, they're making faces, or they're deliberately trying to get your attention without saying anything. These are all signs that emotionally they're not coping particularly well, but also they're signs that they don't necessarily have the language to put to these emotions. So you might also see your child becoming distant or cold. And often what the reason for that is their behavior has changed and we see it as non-acceptable. And then so we put in boundaries, we start using discipline, we might even start taking away things from them. And as a result of that, because they were trying to communicate through their behavior that they know they were not okay, we've given them discipline, which has created a disconnect between where they're feeling and how we're responding to it. And so they begin to shut down. So as a result of that continues over a period, you might see sniping. So at any time when we're trying to communicate or trying to connect with them, we'll get very short answers. And again, this is a common behavior we'll see with older children when we're asking them things like, how was your day at school? And you might get a grunt or a very short, snippy answer. It's that they've had these carried on emotions, but over time, they've been suppressing these emotions and these thoughts, and I'm not quite sure how you say something. They're just carrying them and not sure what the words are. They're just carrying all of it at the same time. So we just getting these kind of outward bursts of emotions, these outward bursts of behavior that we're trying to make some sense out of. But some of the less obvious signs could be things in their physical or mental health symptoms. And that could be things like they're not eating particularly well, they're not sleeping particularly well, or they're doing the opposite, they're eating more, they're sleeping more than they would ordinarily. You might see changes in their skin. And again, they might withdraw from activities and from people. They might be spending more time alone, not doing the things they used to enjoy, spending more time in their room. They might be very obviously stressed. And for all children and for all of us, how they manage stress, but also what we see in terms of their stress symptoms are going to be completely different. But these are some of the signs to look out for. If they're struggling to do activities that they used to do, and again, thinking for older children, that might be things like the activities they used to do after school or on the weekend, but equally going to school itself. They might be making excuses and talking about having a headache or getting stomach issues, getting stomach pains, all sorts of reasons, or particularly picking on particular days or teachers or particular relationships they have to say that these are the reasons why they don't want to go to school. But ultimately, underneath all of these things, there's a thought they're attached to it. And again, we're seeing the behavior caused by these feelings. The long and short of it for both the child and for parents who are looking in and seeing these behaviors is this overall feeling, we can't quite put our name on it, but there's something that's not quite right. Sometimes the child is the only one who can notice that they're going through these signs of distress. And for all of these symptoms I'm talking about, they're signs of stress or distress. And often parents will think about their child as either being anxious or disrespectful or moody, but ultimately all of these signs are their signs of showing emotional health. Thank you. So what can parents do to promote emotional health? Next one, please. So if you've got pen and paper, it's a good time to make some notes. You want to think about what the 3 S's of emotional health are. The first one is showing an interest, and that's to be curious and ask questions. And again, this won't matter what age your child is, it's that general thing that we used to do. And a prime example, especially if you're thinking, casting your mind back to when your children were very young and they would come home the very first time, really proud to come and show you this random picture that they painted, and it's got buttons and like a random piece of foil and something like that, and a piece of pasta glued onto it, and it's probably still a little bit wet. And ideally, we probably want to leave it there to dry or something, but we have this moment where we connect with our child and we talk about how fabulous it is, and we watch the kind of pride come out of our children. We need to keep giving that same message, regardless of what the interest is. And because as they get older, those are the things that kind of naturally will drift away. We might ask them how their day was at school, but again, we're often busy with going back and forth from work or whatever the other things we have to do, running them to the next activity, that we lose sense of greeting or making that reunion when we first pick them up. And it doesn't just have to be from school, it could be from anywhere. Anytime they've been separating from us, showing curiosity around what it is they've been doing, how they've been feeling about what they're doing, and showing, again, that kind of heightened level of, I'm really interested in what you've done, I'm really proud of what you've done, can really promote their sense of self and their self-esteem, but also to say to them that you're noticing the things that they're doing, the things that they're trying to work on, the things they're trying to achieve in exactly the same way. The second S is to share information. So again, feeding that sense of self-esteem, telling them things that are about the family history. And there's often, in thinking about our own family, there's somebody who's met somebody famous or has been famous or connected to royalty or has done something really elaborate. Giving those sense of stories, but also giving them the reason why you've chosen their particular name or the meaning of their name, and noticing the small things around how they express themselves. When they've taken the time to come and tell you about how their day was or any kind of scenario, they're finding a way in their own way to connect to you. And how we respond to that is going to tell them again whether this is okay to do. So if they're giving you stories about what happened at school or with their friends or in the game, taking those moments to just really actively listen, but show some curiosity through asking questions and paying attention to the words they're using. But then after you've listened, letting them know that you're really proud or you really like how they express themselves will encourage more and more of that to happen. And lastly, the third S is to shape. So to help to shape their sense of well-being, to help shape their emotional well-being, is to help them to become involved and be part of something much bigger than themselves. So you've got the image here of It Takes a Village. It's creating the village around them through, again, not just school, getting them involved in the things that they show an interest in. If they're brilliant at art or a sport or something, trying to get them to do extracurricular things. So after school, on the weekends, or even at home, encouraging those things that they're interested in, but also encouraging them to take part in those things with other people. What that does is it really enhances and is like a multiple way of that very thing I mentioned right at the beginning. If you imagine that it was not only you that was going to collect that picture with the pastel and everything else on it, but there were 10 other people or 5 other people also showing your child how proud they are, how amazing they are, that they're being noticed, that they've taken the time to notice these small things about them. That gives that child not only a sense of well-being, but a sense of connectedness. It makes them feel like something's a small part of something much bigger, but a very special part of that much bigger. And we do that all the time. But again, if you think about when we see our children seeing their friends after they haven't seen them for a first time and they run up to each other and they've got lots of news, it's creating lots of little opportunities for that sort of thing to happen. And again, that gives them a good sense of themselves and a sense of being around other people and that connectedness. And for all of the things that is really important is that relationship part and sharing of emotions that creates a healthy, really healthy emotional well-being for a child. Thank you. So thinking again back about what parents can do, not just within the school and sharing with ourselves, thinking about how we do it ourselves. So we need to promote by example. And you probably all heard that scenario of putting a mask on yourself before helping your child is exactly the same. The best way we can show our child how to be emotionally healthy is to make sure that we ourselves are emotionally healthy ourselves. Not just through looking after ourselves and taking what we call me time, it's actively doing all the things I've mentioned, doing things that are showing you new interest, spending time around other people, eating healthily, taking exercise. All of these ways that you're actively showing your child how to be emotionally healthy is the best way to do that. Telling them to do that while we ourselves are busy with work or studying, looking after the other children and worrying about the bills and everything else, they're going to see that first and see how you're prioritizing looking after them. We're not prioritizing how we look after ourselves first. So if we can show them that it's okay to look after ourselves and take a moment out or just to put a pause on everything to go and look after ourselves and then come back to all these other things, it's giving your child that very message that there's times when it's okay not to be okay and to go and tend to yourselves first. So we're going to do that first through showing. Thank you. The next thing we can do is to extend our own emotional vocabulary or the words that we use to describe emotions. Again, if you're thinking about our teenagers and when they come home and they do the grunting or you ask them how their day was and they give very minimum words, it's because they've had a long-standing time of watching us and communicating with us where we're not giving lots of words. The more words we give for feeling great, feeling happy, elaborating on those words, using other words, it will help our child to get very specific about what their feelings are and communicate them to us. And if we think just for a moment about the meaning of communication, I only just really learned exactly what it means myself just over a year ago, is to not only send the message to somebody, but it's to check in with them that it's been received in the way that it was intended. So often we'll get into conversations and we'll say something, the other person responds, and it keeps going like that. It's very rare that we pause and say, did you understand what I meant? And check in with them. And the more, again, we do that with our children is to check in with them and say things like, I'm noticing I'm noticing your body language, I'm noticing you're quieter than normal, I'm noticing this. It helps them then to put and to think about, why am I quieter in this moment? What is going on for me? Adding language to what that is. It's not just that I feel sad and I feel lonely. I feel sad and I feel. Adding to those sentences is developing more language. So when something is wrong, they can add to explaining to us what just happened. So often they'll tell us somebody's upset them or this scenario has happened. They won't add to that and say, I feel sad about it. They won't add to it by saying, not only do I feel sad, it made me feel really lonely. They're learning more about these sorts of things now through school. There's some brilliant agencies going into school doing some of this work, but they're going to spend more time at home, and it's really important that we also do that. What's also really important is that they see us doing that as part of the course. So not only with them, with other people, if they hear us on the phone and everything, we're giving more sense of what these words are that they can use to describe exactly what they're feeling. Thank you. So we have 5 to 5, some things we can do every day at home and can really kind of spend some time to really promote emotional health in our children, which is first and foremost to make it normal to talk about emotions in the family. Some people naturally struggle to talk about emotions. We'll probably say, someone asks us how we are, we'll say fine, and we'll keep the conversation going. Explaining why you feel fine, why do you feel happy, what's happened. Again, is giving really good examples and rich examples to our children, so that when we're asking them or we're noticing something's wrong, it's normal for them to want to elaborate and give us more detail. The second thing is to find time to have fun. Often, again, we're so busy, or children are having fun separately from us, that we don't make those kind of small pockets to have fun and show what that can look like. Again, using emotions and using activities and using things that are fun is a great way to not have to think about what the stresses might be going on, or if our children have been struggling, having fun is a great distraction, but also a way to say, actually, things are not as bad as I thought they were. They get another perspective and see things in a more positive light. And then going back to thinking about what the situation might have been, or what the relationship situation might have been, or what event happened at school, looks very much smaller and easier to manage when they've had some fun and some other things to think about. So we think about that as emotion and emotion. The more active they are, the more interesting activities they are, the more opportunities they have to be around something positive and lighter, makes those times when they are challenged easier to manage. Again, one that parents are not so brilliant at, and I'm sure every parent in the world is guilty of, is not making time to have structure to go and get some proper rest. We kind of do all these things all throughout the day, and we're really busy, and then we kind of get to bed and just exhausted, and we fall asleep. And again, our children are watching this, and they'll try and find every reason under the sun why they need to stay up later and all sorts of things. Having a really good bedtime routine and keeping our children a really good bedtime routine, finding ways to wind down before we even go to sleep, or moments in the day, especially in the weekend when we're otherwise just rushing around or trying to keep them busy, learning to actually take time to be quiet and to relax more, whether that's through meditation or reading or just slower, more quieter activities, can really make the difference too. And then engaging. Often there's things that we want to communicate to our children and we're not sure, especially when it feels like the communication itself has broken down, or there's been an issue in the relationship, or again, life events have happened and we notice that our children aren't being as communicative in the way that we want them to. Doing the small things, whether it's sending them a text or leaving them a little note, putting something in their lunchbox, or drawing little mirror faces on when the mirror seems up in the window for them to walk in and find. There's small things that we can do every day. And again, thinking for our teenagers who we almost have to make an appointment for to do, just knocking on the door and putting your head around it and just checking in with them and saying, how are you? Or what are you up to? Showing again that interest is giving that consistent message that you're there to connect with when they're not okay, but equally to share when they are okay and they've got things of joy that they want to share with you. That regular checking in is again promoting the idea, let's talk about what's going on with you. I'm here to connect with you and manage whatever it is, if it needs to be managed, or to share with it if it needs to be shared. All the time we're doing those bits again, we're promoting their self-esteem and making them feel good about themselves. And that's the emotional difference that we can make as parents. So last but not least is the checking again, the difference between responding to a situation or reacting to a situation. Don't rush to always answer their questions. Again, taking the time to check in How are you feeling about the information that you've just got? Are you in a place to manage it, or do you need to go and do something first? Do you need to create a pause? Do you need to go away and come back to this? Especially when it's been a particularly difficult time for the family, or again, it's been a stressful time at work. If you know for yourself, and generally you have signs, we're not feeling energetically okay ourselves, we'll be really good at those moments to respond to situations and again, like ourselves, or use language to say, I'm tired, or can we do this later, or somehow we're trying to push our children away. Those are the things, again, that create that kind of spring effect that says these things you're talking about are not okay to talk about in the moment. So us first, again, checking in with ourselves. Where am I? Am I able to respond to this? Or can I say, can I come back to you in 10 minutes? For yourselves, whether that's making a cup of tea or doing whatever you need to do to make yourself okay. Is your tank half full? Check those kind of questions with yourself first before responding. And make sure it's a response, not a reaction to. If we're reacting, we're exactly doing the thing that we don't want our children to do. It's doing that thing when they come in from school and they give us that kind of grunted answer. That's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to show, we're going to share, and we're going to shape how they do emotional health by doing it ourselves, but also how we respond and react to them. And we can do that more by listening and being curious, giving them a positive message about themselves through doing all these activities that I've just mentioned, and using statements like, I've noticed, I feel, I'm worried, and I'm proud, gives your child the kind of really good foundation to say, this is what's going on for me. I feel, I'm noticing, and they can talk about the things they're noticing, or they can talk outside themselves, or the things they're noticing about themselves to give you clues for how to help them when they're not coping. Thank you. So some tools you can use when you're noticing that your child is not feeling particularly emotionally healthy, and that could be things around the things they're worried about, or again, feeling slightly anxious about, or they're struggling with a challenge. It might be something that's new that's happening, and again, all the things I mentioned earlier around a new baby coming into the house, or changes they're about to experience, going into nursery or school, university, anything. You can use some of these tools for, depending on their age. So for younger children, you can use this first one with the cloud and the sun. I showed a similar one in the last webinar of a lad that looked quite similar. But actually what you're going to do, where it says something new, is to put the something new in there. So that might be the new baby, that might be the new activity, or the going to school, right at the top there. But then you want to tick or put a picture or something. Again, you can be as creative as you like for each step they make towards it, to acknowledge it. And for each time you're acknowledging that they've made this step towards that thing, that's the same time, again, you want to really boost them and talk about all the things you're noticing that they've done, how they're managing to achieve it, and how you're feeling brilliantly proud about them to do that. The next thing here, again, we've got is to find evidence. So again, because we're thinking between 7 and 11 is when children are becoming more aware of their peers and other over opinions. That's also the time when children start to have less self-esteem, because now they're moving into a bigger community than they used to. They're moving less away from being in the confines of home. They're going to venture out more, think of doing other activities. Schools are taking them on activities. They're going into new places. They're seeing lots of new people, having lots of new experiences that can be quite confusing and quite scary. It's also the time we start to see children start having self-doubt about who they are and the things they're capable of. So what we can help them to do at that stage is to separate what is really going on from what the feeling is. So you can type or writing at the beginning, this is my feeling, but then use the other boxes to write what the facts are. So a prime example might be your child's come home and said no one wants to play with them. And then when you start looking at the facts, you can say, well, actually, it's probably because their best friend wasn't at school that day, but then other children did play with them. And the day before that, there were some other children, and there was a child who asked them to play with them, but they were too busy to play with them. Giving those facts kind of reinforces what's really happening versus what the feeling is. And then lastly, for older children who are 11 to 15, you can give them more information about what their choices are. So again, as I mentioned about the thinking stages, we want to move away from giving them directions and instructions into giving them the ability to be guided into making their own decisions. So they can tell you what the issue is, and then you can help them to kind of think about these two different roads. And you can draw as many roads as you like, or again, be as creative as you like to with it. But get them to think about, what are the other choices I have? What's the first thing that's coming to mind? Or actually, what are my alternatives? What else could I do in this situation? Thank you. So on that last note from me is to remember all parents are doing their best with what they have. In the moments, the time we're feeling like, I haven't done my best in this situation, I'm capable of better. If I wasn't doing this, all these other things could happen, and forget that at the moment, you're doing the very best you can. So focus on building connection and making progress rather than trying to aim for perfection. So thank you for attending, and I'll hand you back to Sarah.
There we go. Thank you, Sam. That was excellent and just as informative as I thought it would be. I really like the bit about putting notes around as well and just making things a bit more fun, but also know that unless you're really taking care of yourself, fun can seem like a really impossible thing. And that self-care, how important it is. It's not just about looking after yourself. It is actually a teaching moment and an opportunity to be modeling, good modeling, and showing our children how to look after their emotional health. So, right, we have got some other questions that have been sent in to us previously. I did note that somebody asked about whether the slides would be shared, and I can confirm they will be. Along with Sam previously did a webinar on building emotional resilience and kindly put together a book for us, which an ebook which we shared, and we will share that again as well. So question number one, I struggle to manage my own emotions at times. Can I still support my child's emotional health?
I love that question. I think it's probably one of the questions that most parents will ask at some point or another, right? First and foremost, I say absolutely yes. Whether we acknowledge it or even recognize it, we are generally very responsive to our children, more so than we are for managing our own. And we also do something which I think just comes out as the child does, is to really mask what is going on for us and focus on the child's emotions. So again, kind of referring to what I said earlier, one of the best ways we can think about helping our child manage their emotions is to acknowledge your own, and to work on taking those moments to look after yourself or to speak to somebody and get some help if you need to. So you can really be present in a way that let's try that again. You can be present in a way that sets a kind of example for your child that you want them to see, not this version of you who's trying to hide your own emotions while trying to manage theirs.
Great, thank you. So how do I know the difference between when my son is being naughty or when he's feeling anxious?
That's a good one. This is going to be a popular opinion, but I'm going to give you the facts and explain them why. Generally, we think of children's behaviour as being naughty or something to that nature, but the reality of it is children don't have the language, they don't have the life experience and everything that we have as adults. And if you're thinking, especially for a child who has got additional needs, they're not necessarily going to have the ability to communicate to their best ability at any given. So what they're going to do instead is to communicate all the time through their behaviour. And casting your mind back to the right at the beginning and us saying that emotional health is the feeling, what we're seeing in their being naughty is the behaviour from the result of what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what we're feeling is a result of what they're thinking. So we've got to look at it backwards almost and say, what is this behaviour telling us? So it may well be anxiety, and often behaviour, when it is what we would consider naughty, is a sign of distress. They're telling us that I don't feel safe, I don't feel heard, I'm not okay. And we need to ask the questions, that bit of being curious, and again, noticing, saying, I'm noticing you're not behaving the way you normally would, or I'm noticing you're doing these things, can help a child to pause themselves and say, actually, yeah, I'm not okay. And that bit where, again, we're making it normal to talk about what the feelings are is going to help them to tell us what's going on, and we can ask them more questions and help them to name what those emotions are.
Really good, thank you. Since COVID, my daughter has suffered with separation anxiety and is now a school refuser. How can I best support her?
I'm going to feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to, again, the child who's refusing to go to school has a way that that's their way of communicating that they're not okay. And there's going to be a lot of pressure, again, because the other things that are going on, and probably from the school too, to try and get the child to go back to school. But it's really important to kind of give the message that the focus isn't about going back to school. The focus is on what is going on with you and what is going on with your feelings, what are the thoughts you're having, or what is the experience that's led to feeling like this in the first place, so they can work from that. to getting them back to school with a plan, and again, working with the school. Anxiety paralyzes people, and I think it's one of the things we talk about in a very undetailed way, but anxiety gives lots of messages all at the same time, which is telling somebody you're not okay, but it doesn't give them any kind of reality or to what to do about it. It just creates a pause and freezing in people. And the best thing we can do is talk about what's going on, but also get them moving. If it is literally all you can get them to do is to walk around the house or walk around or walk outside, and taking those small steps and saying, okay, we're not going to get to school today, and being realistic about what that might look like, and saying, okay, we're going to take a step towards that. What's the step that you can manage today going to look like? All the time you're building up this confidence to eventually we're going to get there. And again, using the tools that I showed earlier, depending on your child's age, is going to show them that this isn't something that is making them abnormal, or it's not making them different to anybody else, and it's not making them less able to cope. It's that in this moment, their need is for something different, and putting them straight back into the environment isn't necessarily going to help them, which is why, again, it's important to speak to the school. But equally, we have a number of programs and resources that we could use or refer you to. So in those instances, please do contact Sarah and Brilliant Parents so you can get some additional support.
Thank you, Sam. I think a lot of people will find that really, really helpful. It can be very physical as well, can't it? Anxiety. Yeah. So taking steps actually just slowly is really good. How do I know when to consult a GP regarding my child's emotional health?
This one is a kind of very simple and effective answer, and it's probably like the strangest one. But I think if the point at which we're asking when to do it is probably just go ahead and do it, because at that point you're already concerned, you're already worried, and it feels like, again, you're as a parent powerless to know what to do. So absolutely go for it at that moment when it feels like you're asking the question. But by all means, use all of the things that we've covered today, because it may well be just through having those conversations and making it normal to talk about what the emotions are, why the emotions are coming up, and really asking children questions around what are the thoughts they're having that's making this feeling. Helping them break that bit down means that you as a parent can respond to the thoughts and help find ways or opportunities and work with the school or whoever else is around to prove those thoughts wrong and show them that they are capable or they are okay. But in some cases, it's necessary to speak to the GP. So I'd say if you're asking the questions, go ahead and do it.
Great, thank you. Okay, when I was growing up, emotional health wasn't a thing we talked about. I'm trying to learn how to give more time to emotional health, my emotional health, to support my child. But I do struggle, and I find myself getting quite frustrated at times. All advice welcome.
I think if you're of a certain age, you can probably, everybody relate to this. Emotional health is something we're only recently talking about, similarly to mental health. Physical health is something that's, always people talking about, and we'll talk about openly. Again, it's the thing we can see, it's not the thing we think, and it's not the thing we feel. So for a number of reasons, that's probably a lot of people's experience that they can relate to. But the fact that you're even asking the question says that you're ready to kind of break that chain that's happened in the family about talking about what's going on, and making that normal, and start with what feels comfortable. If it's a smaller thing as talking about the things that you're noticing, or again, start with you and start noticing how you're feeling and how you can communicate that to the people around you. And an easy win for that is when someone asks you how you are, don't just say I'm fine. Elaborate on how you're feeling, especially with people who are closest to you. Tell them exactly what's been going on or how your day has been. And again, make that the normal thing to do, not just say, oh, the day's been fine or it was busy. Talk about the day, talk about the different parts of the day that may create different meanings in you. I really enjoyed the morning because I saw this person or I did this thing, but in the afternoon, I felt a bit flat and I realized I was hungry. Making that normal for you guys to do in the family is going to make it normal for your child to do, and it can only grow from there.
Thank you. It's kind of challenging your own conditioning around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a couple more questions. How can you connect emotionally to a child that is really good at hiding their true emotions or is good at pretending to be okay?
Being really honest with them about what you're seeing, But also another key tip to do in those instances is to make a specific time and be kind with yourself about that time, because most parents try and fit this in every day. It's sometimes impossible. Be realistic. If it starts with once a week at a set time, then start with that. And you can name that time whatever you want to. If they're younger children, you might call it us time or family time or quality time or whatever it is, but give that time a name so your child knows that that's the time you're going to do that in. But also make it a set time at a set date every single time. And make that time and say to them, this is the time when you can talk to me. And let the child lead that thing. It doesn't matter what age they are, and it doesn't matter. And this is the thing again about being prepared to kind of go the extra mile with your child, is that if all they're going to do is sit there and saying nothing, but you can see they're not okay, you naming what you're noticing. I noticed that latest you've been quieter, and in particular this day you were quieter than normal. I noticed on this day you went straight to your room. I noticed on this is a regular pattern, or whatever it is you're noticing. You're noticing that they're sad, you're noticing they're not dressing the same. All the things you're noticing, you can tell them, but you can also tell them what your feeling is in response to that, because that's the bit, again, we don't necessarily do, is to say, I'm worried that you're not telling me something, and it could be something really important that's happening. I'm worried that you don't feel able to talk to me. Even if it is a bit of eye contact or something, you're going to get a response. And again, you're elaborating that conversation. But if we can do that in a consistent way at a consistent time, your child's getting the message that this is a time, if I'm ready and when I'm ready to have the conversation, I can do it then. And it will start probably, for a child who's been holding on to something for a long time, it can start with maybe 1 or 2 words. It might start with them doing something random. It might not be talking, it might be, especially again thinking about younger children, just let them lead the play. That's a time when you guys play together, and if they're drawing something on your face, or you're having to play Lego or play the computer game that you know you can't stand, do those things, because that's just giving the message, I'm here to talk and I'm here for you to have these conversations with.
Thank you, Sam.
No
Excuse me. How can I best encourage my son to see school in a positive light and to help him be less anxious and negative about it? He's very self-critical, but only aged 4.5.
First thing I'd say is to have a conversation with his teachers and find out what they're noticing or what they're observing, or ask them specifically to observe your child in the school setting. It's not uncommon for children of this age to start, because that's the time when they're becoming aware of themselves more. They're moving away from spending more time around family and loved ones and everything. So there's big world outside of ourselves. We start questioning or preparing the question of, who am I in this bigger environment, and why do I matter? And then they will see other children doing things that they want to do, and it feels a bit uncomfortable. They're going through lots of confusion in those moments. But what you'll also notice in those moments is there's going to be things that they're kind of standing on the edge of, wanting to do and not doing. And those are good signs for encouragement. Whether that is encouraging them to start writing their first letters, or naming shapes or numbers and reading, all those sorts of things, doing more of the things they're starting to do at school at home. And again, in a small way, if it is that every day you just practice the sound of one letter of the alphabet, and again, grow their confidence slowly. Find those little things that you can do at home, but start first with the school and ask them what it is that they're noticing in terms of your child standing on the edge of, but not quite getting involved in, because those are the opportunities for you to do something with it.
Really good, thank you. We've got a few more questions, but I think we're going to go to the poll for the moment, and we'll make sure those questions do get answered. If not today, then there'll be a follow-up. So we really appreciate everybody if you can contribute to the poll. It really helps us make sure that we continue to bring information and webinars to you that are relevant, that you want to see. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody that's participated. It looks like it's been a success today, and the vast majority of you are saying that you found it either good or excellent, which is really good to see. And a whopping 96% of you have said that the information covered today will inform you to support your child's emotional health. So that's really good that their aims have been achieved. And Close to 95% of you have said that yes, you agree, that you either agree or strongly agree that you found the views on understanding emotional health have been positively informed. So you can always come back to us, and hopefully when we do send out the information from Sam about building our own emotional resilience, maybe tying that all up together will be really, really helpful. And 85% of you are Hillingdon parents. So thanks everybody for turning up today. 100% of you would be interested in another Lunch and Learn. That's a good result. Thanks everyone. Okay. So well, I hope you found the webinar as beneficial as I have. As I mentioned a few times, we will be circulating the answers to all those unanswered questions. So that will come out in the form of a video, which we'll share with this recording, along with the slides and along with the Building Emotional Resilience ebook that Sam's previously put together for us. You can expect that within the next week and a half, once we've got it all edited and ready to send to you. I want to thank Sam again for coming in and providing such a wonderful lot of information really succinctly, and giving us lots of practical tips on how to best support our children. And as for us, well, Brilliant Parents, we've got a really busy month ahead. Our next webinar is on the 10th of February. It's on the subject of the digital world for teenagers with Michelle McDowell, which she'll also be looking at the emotional implications of the digital world, as well as some great tips and some practical advice and understanding around what it is that they're experiencing online. And then on the 14th, we welcome you to come and join us at the Hayes Muslim Centre. So in person, really exciting. We're going to be having a talk with Andre Harriet on understanding the complexities of youth culture. It'll be an insight into working with complex and high-risk children, and how we as parents can better safeguard our children from things that may be happening outside of the home and are perhaps beyond our control. And just to highlight our ongoing PPP programs and the Parent Champion program, if you are a parent of a teen who is having a particularly difficult time, please do go to the Parent Champion tab on the Hillingdon page, and you can self-refer there. Additionally, if you personally or anyone you know is going through a separation, divorce, or is experiencing conflict between both parents, we work with Hillingdon and the Parenting Apart program to offer support. Please do get in touch about that or any of the other programs and subjects that we've discussed today. And on that, I just want to again thank Sam so much. Thanks to all of you for attending, and we'll see you again soon.